to it, because it would be very strange that in these special moments I didn't talk about it. Yes, I will talk deeply about it, but let me start by saying that this decision is not a political decision, is a court decision, an international court that was created with a strong support from the European Union member states. The Rome Statute was very much supportive. And when the court decided to issue an arrest warrant against Putin, many voices were applauding. And some of these voices are quite remarkable, silent today. And I want to speak as Vice President of the European Commission and as High Representative to support the International Court, International Criminal Court, and remind member states of the European Union that they are bound to implement the decision of the court, and that the candidates to become members of the European Union, they are supposed, among their obligations to become a member, is to integrate the criminal court. So it will be very funny that the people who want to become members of the European Union are obliged to do something that the current members of the European Union don't fulfill. It will be very funny. So I want to raise my voice in support of the International Criminal Court and remind that these decisions are compilatory for the European Union member states, and we were applauding when the Criminal Court decided to issue an arrest warrant against Putin, and the same that they were applauding a lot. Now some of them are quite silent. I will come back to it. But I want to say that the court decision has nothing to do with anti-Semitism, nothing to do against anti-Semitism, and it's not a political decision. But I am alarmed by the extreme polarization and politicization of the reactions against this court decision. I will mention them after. I want to start talking about the Middle East peace process, which is today very high in the agenda, but it was not very high in the agenda when I came to Brussels 5 years ago. My staff were telling me, don't invest your political capital, don't spend your time. It's useless. Many people try, no one succeeded. And by the time being, well, things are quite quiet. Jack Sullivan was saying 1 week before the terrific attack of Hamas that the Middle East has never been so peaceful. Well, it showed that nobody was aware of what's going on. That apparently it was peaceful, it was not. It was boiling from inside. But when I started working in the Middle East, I launched a process. I call it a process called the day after, to try to look on the Middle East from the point of view of looking for a two-state solution being implemented. At the United Nations General Assembly, just before the terrorist attacks of 7th of October, we launched this initiative. But then the terrorist attack happened 1 month later, and everything became stalled once again. But this conflict could drag the whole humanity into the abyss. In Gaza, we are already looking at it, but it's not only in Gaza. The consequences could be very damaging and very dangerous for the whole world. I continue working with this, with the peace process, and we launched on the last United Nations General Assembly a coalition for the implementation of the two-state solution. And my last activity on the 28th of November in Brussels will be to chair the meeting of the technical working groups that are trying to look for how to advance in this way. They hold a meeting in Saudi Arabia, and now it's a turn to do it in Brussels. This will be my last activity before leaving my job. I'm saying that the conflict will affect the whole world because the conflict has already taken a global dimension. And the price of no peace in the Middle East has become exorbitant, not only for the people who are dying below the bombs, but for the whole region and maybe for the world. Inaction is not an option. Wait and see is not a policy. And providing the same response to the same problems once and again without bringing a solution is no longer possible. I think we agree on that. And your commitment, your strong commitment, and the courage you show on going against the wind and facing in animosity in order to fight for peace shows that you are, I don't need to convince you. But let me to say some things about how do I see to support the peace camp, to confront spoilers, to stick to the facts, to protect international law, and to make the European Union relevant. Once upon a time, the European Union was relevant. The idea of the two-state solution was launched by the Europeans in Venice as far as 40 years ago, or longer than that. It was in 1982. And I think it was Giscard d'Estaing who launched the idea at the Venice Convention. So we were relevant. And I think that we could become relevant again if we have the political will. So let's go through these points. First, support the peace camp. You. Secondly, to confront the spoilers. Third, to stick to the facts. Four, which means fight against disinformation. Four, to protect international law against the spoilers of international law. And this morning I got terrified when I listened to a US senator saying that they are going to impose sanctions on any country that cooperates with the Court of Hague. It's really incredible. They are going to impose sanctions to any country that cooperates with the International Criminal Court.
So they will sanction the United States by this?
I don't know to whom they will sanction. They mentioned Canada, France, Germany, and any other country that could support the International Criminal Court. He's a US senator. Huh? So when I'm talking about protecting international law, I am not talking in the vacuum. I'm talking about concrete. And last, to make the European Union relevant. I am going to go quickly to all these fields. Support the peace camp. Support the peace camp means to empower moderates and make sure that the voice of reason can take the center of a stage. It means a conscious effort to provide a space for peace advocates and to make your voice to be heard. In the political debate, if your voice is not heard, then your efforts are useless. Last Sunday, I met with the former Israeli Prime Minister, Mr. Olmert, and the former Palestinian Foreign Minister, Mr. Nasser Al-Qida, and I invited them to come and to have dinner with some colleagues of the Foreign Affairs Council meeting in order to voice their ideas and to listen to everybody who is willing to talk about peace. Because extremist voices are the ones who are dominating the discourse and distorting the perception of others. People listen, and it depends to whom they listen And your voices and the voices of peace has to be heard. And the most effective way of countering extremism discourse is through human interaction among people, as you represent here. To achieve peace, we need to appreciate that behind whatever distorted images of the other, whatever the other is being projected as someone who doesn't deserve to live, someone who doesn't want peace, someone that deserves to be treated as an animal, there is an intrinsic willingness to live in peace as part of the human nature. As part of the human nature, there is an intrinsic will to live in peace. Because not human society can live in conflict forever. And I think that the European Union has proved that we could make peace. Remember in 1945, after the Second World War, the enmity between the Germans and the French. Remember how Europe was after the Second World War. Who could have imagined that 70 years later I could travel from Gibraltar to Helsinki without passing any border? Who could imagine that the war today is conceived as something impossible among us? What a great success. What a great success in the history of mankind. So, if this happens, it may happen. We just have to work for it. No human societies can live in conflict forever. And that's why I called in Barcelona some weeks ago a conference with the motto, Reclaiming Our Shared Humanity. Because we have lost the sense of shared humanity. There is no longer any kind of empathy for the pain of the others. There is no longer a concern for the pain of the others. The others deserve to suffer. And we have to recover the sense of humanity and to make the pain of the others something that is being felt as a pain for human beings across the humanitarian region. At the end of the day, the divide is not between Israelis and Palestinians, not along the West and the Arab or the Muslim world. The real rift is between those who want peace and human rights and those who benefit from conflict. Because some people benefit from conflict. And they need the conflict. And that's why they continue pushing for it. Israeli civil society's activism for Palestinian rights has to be spotlighted to the Arab world at every occasion. And Arab peace efforts, especially the Arab Peace Initiative, should be known by all Israelis too. I just came from Jordan, which is at the forefront of this effort. And I want to salute the remarkable commitment to peace through the region. So, what can we do? What can we do? To use this global alliance for the implementation of the two-state solution created the United Nations General Assembly to develop a positive incentive to support the peace camp. It must be positive incentive to support you. And the next meeting in Brussels will be a good occasion for doing that. I personally believe that a credible commitment to the two-state solution means recognizing both states. This would support moderated in the peace camp. But I don't have any delusion that this will happen effectively, and not all the members of the European Union are ready to recognize the state of Palestine. Not today. It has been some important decisions by the part of some of my member states, you know that. But I don't have any illusion that this could happen soon. But we have to continue discussing about it. Second, we have to confront the spoilers. Not only to support the peace camp, but be courageous enough in order to confront the spoilers. And the key word in this regard is consistency. Confronting the spoilers only in one side can be counterproductive in two ways. The spoilers on the other side will feel emboldened, and the spoilers being sanctioned get to play the victim card inside their own community. Why us and not them? So it has to be a great effort of consistency in order to show that there is a common denominator and a common approach to any kind of people spoiling the peace process. And this is part of the fight against disinformation. Disinformation is the way to increasing radicalization. For too long we have been focusing on the spoilers only in one side. We listed Hamas, we listed Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and other groups of terrorist entities, and well done. We have established a sanctions regime for the perpetrators of the 7th of October attacks, but we started listing also extremist Israeli settlers for the first time under the global human sanctions regime. I propose, as some member states propose also, to use this sanctions regime against the violent settlers that are guilty of attack against the Palestinian people. And it's good to put in the balance that in both sides, I am not putting anything on the same level as someone will claim. But if there is something that deserves to be punished, it has to be punished, wherever it happens. The important thing is not who does, but what is being done. And yes, the European Union has taken measures in order to sanctions under the global human rights sanction regime some extremism settlers for violating human rights. And we have to think about how the European Union can implement the decisions not of the criminal court, but the International Court of Justice. When the International Court of Justice says that occupation is illegal, it's illegal. And if it says that the occupation of the Palestinian territories has to have an end as quick as possible, and it has not to be supported, and call everybody for not support the occupation, does it mean something? Does it pure rhetoric? When Crimea was invaded, we immediately took decision saying that the import of products coming from the occupied Crimea were banned to enter into the European Union. It was a product ban against the exports of Crimea product because Crimea was illegally occupied. We haven't done the same thing with respect to the Palestinian occupied territories. We have decided to put a kind of labeling in order for the consumers in the European Union be aware of where these products are coming from. Take care, this product is being produced in an illegally occupied territory. Does it happen effectively? Is this being implemented with enthusiasm? I doubt it. But it should be done. And more than that, the recent advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice has to be considered not as business as usual, but trying to do exactly the same thing that we did with Crimea. Otherwise, the accusation of double standards will come, and it will be difficult to refuse. So I think that most has to be done against the ones who spoil the peace, sanctions against the spoilers, regardless of whether Israeli settlers or Palestinian armed groups, has to be taken. And I think that a dedicated spoiler sanction regime, it exists, but it could it could help to protect peace process from the ones who undermine it. The third thing is to stick to the facts. To support the peace camp and confront the spoilers, we need to set the record straight. People has to know what's going on. The war is not only spilling over on the ground in Gaza and Lebanon. It is escalating online. The battle of narrative that polarizes between Israelis and Palestinians is spreading around the world, fueling incitement to violence, disseminating supremacist discourse, anti-Semitism, anti-Muslim, at the end, dehumanization. And these toxic messages find a fertile ground because tragically the algorithm of hate has become much more profitable than the algorithm of peace. And you know how does it work. You know how the messages are being fabricated and disseminated. And the algorithm of the artificial intelligence that selects the messages that you are going to receive is more powerful because it's more profitable than the algorithm that selects the messages of peace. And then we have a Netanyahu government claiming that the information emerging from Gaza is unreliable. It's unreliable. Well, this same government has enforced the longest media blackout in the history of press freedom. You cannot say at the same time that the information is not reliable and at the same time to forbid any kind of free information. We are facing the longest media blackout in the history of press freedom, imposed by a democratic country. Media outlets are banned from entering Gaza to independently verify the content of both sides and the devastating impact of the war on civilians. Local journalists, previously threatened by Hamas, are now killed by Israeli bombs. And the 6th, 8th of October, 130 Palestinian journalists have been killed. Journalists. Making Gaza the deadliest place in the world for media workers. I'm coming from Jordan and I have several meetings with the different United Nations organizations that have an idea what's going on there, that could come inside, that have people inside, and they receive information and they tell you what's going on. Netanyahu cannot turn off the light in Gaza and then complain that the world cannot see. You cannot turn off the light and then to complain that it is not possible to see. If you want to see, open the light and let people come in and witness what's happening. Freedom of the press is also under scrutiny within Israel itself. Journalists who criticize the war or its conduct are facing increased pressure. And in both sides, disinformation campaigns are shaping narrative of war and peace with fear and distrust. Some voices deny the unspeakable atrocities perpetrated by Hamas on the 7th of October. Yet the images and testimonies of these massacres are impossible to erase. Others deny the disproportionate use of force and the staggering number of civilian casualties caused by the Israeli bombardment in Gaza. But the harrowing images and testimonies of children, women and elders as mutilated or trapped behind rubble are unbearable to watch. But they have to be seen. In Spanish we say, ojos que no ven, corazón que no siente. If your eyes don't see, your heart don't feel. In order to feel, you have to know. In order to have emotions, you have to have images. And the images are there, but they are not widespread at the same level in different parts of the world. Public opinions don't have the same access to images. And that's why the heart feels differently. And I want to pay tribute to the journalists, courageous journalists, human rights defenders, lawyers and doctors, both Israelis and Palestinians, who strive to document the truth to preserve it for future accountability. These are the people we must stand behind. And we must counter disinformation campaigns like the one who's going on targeting UNRWA, which jeopardize lives at a time when Palestinians in Gaza most need humanitarian aid. In this battle of narrative, yes, battle of narrative, fight for ideas, trying to conquer the mind of the people, let's champion truth and amplify the voices like yours that wants to make peace irreversible. But this is a very-day battle, not in the battlefield. It's in the TV screens, it's in the social network, it's in every news, in every image, in every comment that flows through the networks and poison the mind of the people, impeding them to have a clear understanding of what's going on. It's not a story of good and bad. It's a tragic story. The most tragic events that I've been able to see during my mandate. And I am afraid it will mark generations. The fourth thing that we have to do is to protect international law. I've been claiming to respect international law. When Russia attacked Ukraine, we claimed about international law being respected. And we went to the United Nations to ask the United Nations to condemn the invasion. This is the fourth principle related to the historical duty to preserve multilateral architecture. And it is legitimate for us Europeans, but I would say for greater part of the international community, to portray ourselves as the guardians of international law and human rights when we see this being blatantly disregarded on a daily basis. We cannot pretend to be, as we portray ourselves, the guardian of international law. If we look to the other side, when this international law is being violated, we cannot proclaim ourselves to be the guardians of the rule of law without acting on the basis of the judgment of the International Court of Justice, confirming the illegality of the occupation. We cannot pretend to uphold a rules-based international order and not implement the decisions of the International Criminal Court. We cannot pick and choose the decisions we like and those who don't like. And we must ensure that the ICC is able to function without impediment from any third party and without threats and intimidation as the one I've been mentioning at the beginning, which certainly terrifies me because it's not coming from an authoritarian state. It's not coming from a third world dictatorship. It's coming from the US Senate. Accountability has to be comprehensive and impartial. The impunity on all sides has to be seen in Gaza and Lebanon, and impunity has to end. If there is impunity, it will never be justice. Without accountability, it will never be justice. And what we see the International Criminal Court doing is working to end impunity. To end impunity, because one has the feeling that in this war there are too much impunity. And because without accountability, it will not be justice, neither peace. The Conference of the High Contracting Parties of the Geneva Convention must be a key moment next year to strengthen the commitment to enforce international humanitarian law. And we cannot stay idle when the United Nations, its leaders, its agencies, its staff on the ground are being ignored, obstructed, humiliated, and even assaulted. No, the European Union member states, the European Union institutions, the international community cannot look to the other side when the United Nations highest officials and the people in the ground risking their life are being insulted, ignored, obstructed, and even killed. 240 United Nations workers have been killed in Gaza since October 2023. And I want to use this occasion to pay tribute to the United Nations agencies and also to the United Nations Secretary General, from the top to the down, to UNRWA, to OCHA, which are the indispensable lifelines for millions of people. In Jordan, I had the chance to meet with, I don't want to mention his name, but his job, the humanitarian coordinator for the occupied Palestinian territories. He has been witnessing and suffering the last month what's going on. And when you listen to him, well, you understand the reasons that brought the International Criminal Court to the decision the court has taken. One understands the reasons by which the International Court has issued this statement. You know that there is no more Gaza left in Gaza. There is no more Gaza left in Gaza. No villages, no hospital, no schools, no society. Only individuals fighting for their survival on an individual basis and risking to be left totally alone very soon. In a matter of days, the United Nations may be forced to stop its humanitarian assistance because there is no more food, there is no more fuel. The little that managed to get into is being looted by gangs acting in total impunity. We talk about Haiti. We will have Haiti in the Mediterranean if things continue like this. And human beings will be dying of hunger and disease, being exposed to rape and violence, and the whole humanity is looking to the other side. The last point, we have to make use of EU leverage. We have leverage, but it has to be used. The European Union is relevant when it wants to be relevant. And in order to be relevant, you have to be united. Otherwise, it's not possible. We have been remarkably united in confronting the invasion of Ukraine until now. Until now. The first fault lines have already appeared. But until now, it has been remarkable. When we want to be relevant, we are. And we must continue with what we have always been good at doing. Upholding international legality, promoting the two-state solution. There is no a single member state of the European Union who is against the idea of the two-state solution. Not a single one has said, I am against it. Well, maybe someone thinks it's going to be very difficult. Some believe that it never happened. But everybody supported it for years. For years. Every time there is a meeting of the European Union member states, the conclusion is the same. We support the two-state solution. The question is, what do you do in order for these solutions to be implemented? Because the key word is implementation. A word that some members are so a little bit reluctant to use. Because implementation means to take decisions. Means to use coercion, means to put constraint. Otherwise, it's just pure rhetoric. We are very much good at denouncing international law violations. We should be good also when these violations are being performed by our close partner. Israel is our close partner. We have with Israel the strongest association agreement that we could imagine with any other country in the world. The dimension of external relations, economic relations, is so big. The participation of the Israeli government in all of our programs is so important. But certainly, I think that when we hear the threats of settlement expansions, the threat of annexation, attack against international organizations and agencies, it should make a light blink, saying, look, there is something wrong here. Our close partners seems to be ready to violate international law, or they are already violating international law. Why don't we use the same standards that we use in Crimea, as I mentioned before? I think that we have to have a close look on the way we measure the behavior of our partners and act in accordance with our principles. We need to continue investigating in more democratic Palestinian institutions. We need to invest on making the Palestinian Authority and bodies being more democratic and legitimate and more efficient. We have to ask, and we are asking for reforms on the Palestinian Authority. Bring the Palestinian Authority back to the level of statehood as it was set in 2012. Increase the acceptances by the Palestinian people. Help them to provide better services and security. As I said, we are the stronger partner with Israel in trade and on many other issues. I think this close cooperation now is at risk of not moving forward in the light of continuous violation of international law and human rights in the Palestinian territories. Are they a violation of the Palestinian rights in the Palestinian occupied territories? Are they or not? Yes, they are. It's impossible to deny it. Well, which are the consequences? It has already stalled and we are not advancing. I think it will not clarify this. And that's why I presented to my colleagues of the Foreign Affairs Council my assessment at the request of some member states. It has not been any decision from the Council of Ministers, but it doesn't mean that this has not to be continued, studied, and taken into consideration. And we need to be very much strong in Europe to prevent a spillover that jeopardizes the security and safety of our Jewish communities in Europe. Permanently, we have to fight anti-Semitism and anti-Muslim, any kind of anti-someone for belonging to any kind of human group. There is nothing more cruel, more stupid, more unacceptable than anti-Semitism. It's the worst invention of humankind. But this word cannot be used in vain. Anti-Semitism brings us to the dark moments of our history. And that's because it's our dark moment that we have a responsibility for this not happen again, against anyone. Don't use the word in vain. Don't say everybody is anti-Semitic. I am not anti-Semitic. Secretary General of the United Nations is not anti-Semitic. The Spanish president of the government is not anti-Semitic. The workers of the United Nations agencies are not anti-Semitic. Don't use this word in vain. Because being anti-Semitic brings back the memory to the Holocaust and millions of people being killed. Please, don't use this word in vain. I have the right to criticize the Netanyahu government because it's a democratic government elected by the Israeli people as much as I have the right to criticize any other government in the world. But to criticize the policies of a government and the way they conduct the war, it doesn't make me anti-Semitic. The best friends of Israel are not the only ones who say, go, do whatever you want. Free hand. No, these are not the best friends of Israel. The best friends of Israeli people are the ones who remind that there is a limit to the right to defend. And these limits are being based on international law and the respect for human dignity everywhere. Not to make a human being become an animal, because there is not an animal. This is what I wanted to say today here with you. And that's why you should continue saying loudly. And I thank you for taking the risk of saying that. I don't take any risk for saying that. You take risk. When you will go back home, when you will be again in your communities, in your societies, the fact of being in favor of peace and denouncing the abuses of any camp, of anyone, will make you at risk. I know it's not going to be easy for you. And that's why I wanted to be here. I could have not been here. I could have been back in Brussels. But I wanted to be here because you are on the right side of history. And I want you to thank for it.